How do the combined Dynasty and Devy rankings merge together? Where do the prospects of tomorrow fit with the stars of today? Next on the Football Guys College Football Show.
That felt like a Chat GPT hook you got going on there. But welcome to the Football Guys College Football Show here. We appreciate you guys hopping in. And we're doing tiers today, baby. So we're going to be looking at quarterbacks, Dynasty quarterback tiers, and we're going to throw a little bit Devy guys in there. Not too many. Quarterback position at Devy can be a scary thing, but we're going to be diving in. But before I do that, if you're still in your rookie drafts, go get the rookie guide. You can find it at footballguys.com. There's pretty much no better resource out there for you guys to go grab that. And right now, like we've had a ton of people, DM us, talk to us to thank us for that because, how good it is in terms of helping them just kind of navigate their rookie draft and be able to find values and those type of things. So go get that right now, after the show. Don't not yet, but after the show, go grab it, go to the site, go download it. But let's get into our tiers. Let's talk about it. So we're going to go through tiers of Dynasty ranks. You got to use tiers. You got to understand where the tier breaks are, especially when you're doing your values there. So tier 1 for us is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts. So those are our 3 guys in that top tier 1. What do we think about this tier? I know we had some discussion pre-show about it. So what is your concern, Jeff? Let's start with you. You're fired up. You're ready to go. Let it fly.
So I think it's fair in Dynasty to have Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback 1 overall, largely because his production doesn't rely as much on his legs. He can do that a little bit. He gives you a little bit of that, but with the arm talent that we've seen, everything that he does in the passing game, the way he's threatened records in that Andy Reid offense, I think that we feel a little bit better about that game aging a little bit more because the reality of it is, and I have a spotlight coming out about Bijan Robinson, and I dove in and compared an article I did previously looking at Anthony Richardson compared to Bijan Robinson at the top of your rookie drafts. And really, when you're looking at these athletic quarterbacks, you have about a 7-year window where they're giving you that athleticism with their legs, and then usually it tails off. Either injuries happen or just something comes up, and quarterbacks just don't run the way that they used to. And so with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, I think you're right in the meat of that production window right now. And so you feel good in the next couple of years, continuing to have that elite upside when it comes to rushing. But again, long-term, when you're thinking it out, playing out in Dynasty, you feel comfortable about Mahomes' game aging. I do think it's a little bit funny how some people believe that Mahomes needs to be the clear quarterback 1 in redraft rankings because he wasn't the quarterback 1 last year, even when he broke those records. And Josh Allen has been the quarterback 1 over the last handful of the last 3 seasons when it comes to overall fantasy. Jalen Hurts was the quarterback 1 last year, but again, that was because depending on what service you use, if you're looking at a per game basis, some people have the 2.7 points that he accumulated against the Bengals included in 17 game totals. You take that out and he equaled Jalen Hurts on a per game basis. So the idea that there needs to be a consensus in redraft this year is funny to me because it's not true. But again, Dynasty, I think that we've tiered it properly, and I think that that's the way it sets up with those 3.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to me because as we get into our tier 2, we've got the 3 guys that have the contract here in tier 1. So we know that we are getting a starting quarterback. It's a year ago at this time, we weren't, but there were people asking if Jalen Hurts was going to be a viable starter or if the Eagles would be set up to go ahead and take a quarterback in the 2023 class. Clearly, that did not come to fruition. Jalen Hurts is their answer. He got a lot of money. I think from a fantasy perspective, Jeff, you brought up a good point pre-show about if they do change the rule about pushing guys into the end zone, what that impact might look like. But from an actual fantasy perspective, I think we haven't quite seen the ceiling of Jalen Hurts. I do think the running is going to be a little lesser this year, and I do wonder if the passing volume will kind of make up for that, or if we're looking at, okay, he was the QB1, now he has settled into that 3, 4, 5 range, and that's kind of where we're having it. So I think there's definitely some debate on if he should fall into tier 2. I am comfortable with him in tier 1, and then Allen and Mahomes kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah, I'm with you there. This is my kind of tier. I think if you get one of these 3 guys in Dynasty, you're excited. And I do think when you're looking at like the way Dynasty startups are going right now, you get one of these three guys, these guys are able to carry your quarterback situation where you can maybe wait on that quarterback too, and you might have to because you're going to reach that back end of that second, where you're comfortable waiting for these guys maybe in tier 5 or tier 6, the guys we're going to talk about, to where you can really build around them. And I really want those first 3 picks. Like when you're looking at way dynasty drafts go right now, it's actually beneficial to get these top 3 guys, and then you can build. It's way more roster building, and it's funner to kind of build around these 3 because there's so many different ways you could take your roster. Win now, you can still do competitive, be competitive early, like those type of things. After that, you get this tier 2. There's question marks, not as many, but there's still some question marks with these guys. So let's dive over to tier 2. So we got tier 2, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. So those are the only 2 guys that we have there. And I'm pretty comfortable with both of these guys here. Their contracts are coming. I am assuming like pretty soon. Burrow talked about it today. He talked about how he wants to take a little less money so that receivers around him, he can build around him. And that should be music to fantasy managers' ears. If that's the case, we could see Burrow having these weapons. Maybe Higgins doesn't leave, like many people think T. Higgins is going to leave, and that's going to definitely help his value in terms of like long term. Herbert, on the other hand, they've been trying to build around him. I don't think they've done the best job there building around him, and he had kind of a down year last year, but he was also playing with didn't he get he had something going on, like stabbed in the rib cage, and he had a bunch of stuff going on to where you would assume that he's going to struggle a little bit. Any takeaways from this tier? Are we good here, Jeff?
Yeah, for me, I push Burrow's like almost tier 1.5 for me, and I, especially if they're able to keep T. Higgins long term, I think he's right there. I think that it's, I think you're sacrificing 2 points per game when you look at it relatively. Yeah. But again, that upside is there. I mean, we've seen at the end of the 2021 season, Joe Burrow swung dynasty leagues. Joe Burrow swung in fantasy leagues, period, because he is that guy. He's capable of dropping those 40-point games just like Hurts and Mahomes and Allen are, just through a different path, and you're just not going to get as many of them. So I still feel good about getting Burrow, and it pushes up a little bit more. Herbert is I think he's more solidly tier 2 in my eyes, just because we haven't seen the sustained production relative to the other players that I think we've seen at the very tippy top. But again, that ceiling is there. And I think that there are some questions long-term about his weapons relative to Burrow, because if Burrow's married to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins for the next 10 years, we're really hoping that Quentin Johnson hits for the Chargers. Otherwise, Herbert could be running quickly into an area where it's cycling some weapons, trying to find some answers there.
Yeah, and I think the thing that makes me a little more comfortable with Herbert in this tier is the introduction of Kellen Moore. I think that a lot of that offense last year was due to the scheme and the offensive coordinator, and just everything was so shallow, and it didn't really play into Herbert's strengths. And I think that's something that Kellen Moore does well. So I think we're going to get back to that ceiling of, Herbert's thrown up 4 QB1 overall weeks this year, and now he's sitting here in the top 5 pretty comfortably in that Burrow tier. But I understand the concerns for sure long term. I think, they need to definitely have a path forward after Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are gone, because I think with their reliability and availability over the last few years, you can kind of see the end coming already. I think Quentin Johnston is a nice first step, but I think they need to fix the situation with Eckler. I think they need to get a stronger running game in general, because I don't think Eckler is quite that in terms of being able to actually run the ball 20 times a game if they have to. Whereas I think Burrow does have that. So, but I think, overall, I'm comfortable with this tier, and I would argue that maybe some guys in tier 3 could wind up in this tier when we get here next year.
I have a question. Kevin knows Kellen Moore better than anybody here, but Herbert, we know he has the athleticism, but he doesn't run like you would like to see him run. It's only about 150 rushing yards last year. In Kellen Moore's system, is that something that could uptick, that could pick up? Because I think that if that does, that creates a big separation, I think, and kind of shoves him to flirting with that top tier.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to be clear. I think Kellen Moore is going to do really well there. And I know he had his kind of down things there, but I don't know how much McCarthy let him go. Where I don't think Moore is going to have that problem, because they need to win. And so, yeah, you're right there. I think they could. I think the question is just with Dak, because everything I know about Dak, just being a Cowboys fan, he didn't want to run. After he did that to his ankle, he was like, listen, you need to protect me. I'm going to run in big games. That's it. And I think all around NFL and in the Dallas area, when I talked to guys out there, that was it. So how much are they willing, after Herbert's kind of been injured, are they willing to do it too? I think that is like, is Herbert want to run? Like, are they going to do that? I think he's competitive enough to do it, but like, will that coaching staff want to get him injured? Because they saw what happened last year. Like, and they're win now. The way they're built in the salary cap, like they don't want to get him hurt there. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think if he's ready to go, I think they can. In that system, you're going to see those areas there. And I think in the red zone as well, like they could realistically, like Herbert's athletic enough to do, QB sneaks, steal that from the Eagles. Like there's things that they could do with him. I think it just comes down to that coaching staff and how comfortable they are putting those situations. And I think that's the biggest one. I do think though, before we move on to the next tier, I think Herbert's kind of a sneaky buy. Like if you're talking about a guy that's in that weird tier 2 range, like what you could give up for him. So just to give you guys context of like a trade that happened for him recently, he went, and this is a league of mine, he went for Saquon in the 105, and the guy that drafted the 105 was Stroud. Excuse me. So if you want to go get Justin and you feel like you need that top tier that could get in that tier 1, it could be a value.
Man, I need to play in these leagues that people will actually let go of these elite quarterbacks, because in my experience, you land one of these guys and they're basically going to retire on your roster.
Yeah, and I think and I think that's one of those things. It just depends on what leagues you're on. You know your values out there, but there are some people down on Herbert. There are definitely some people down on him in terms of what he did last year. But I wouldn't be. But let's get into the fun, because tier 3 is where the fun's at. So tier 3, we got Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, and then Lamar Jackson. So those 3 guys have kind of been all the way. Lamar's kind of flirted with tier 4 until he got his contract. We know what Lawrence probably is. We've probably seen his floor now. We're probably excited to see his ceiling. And then Fields is the guy. Fields is the one, is like, all right, should he be at 6? Should he be ahead of Lawrence and Jackson? What's your take there, Jeff?
That's where I have him in my rankings. I've got him up there, and we saw the production out of the rushing, and I think that we feel comfortable that's going to continue. The big question with him is they invested in that offensive line, and that's exactly what you wanted to see. And then the addition of DJ Moore, and DJ Moore is a spotlight that I'm working on right now for Football Guys, and that's going to go up. And I'm very bullish on what DJ Moore is going to bring to that Chicago offense, really bring to Justin Fields' game, because for all the talk about him being a sub 60% passer and whatever it might be, he had a very great run through from that New England game last year up until he was injured towards the end of the season, where his completion percentage was up around 68% over that stretch. And it really looked like the coaching staff figured out what to do with him. It looked like he figured out what to do within the game, and it looked like the game slowed down for him. And that was with the talent that they had last year. And that was with Darnell Mooney missing most of that stretch, with Chase Claypool being a brand new addition there, without DJ Moore there. They're bringing Robert Tonyan in, will get a little bit more depth and production out of tight end. And I think I think the passing is a lot better on Justin Fields than kind of is the consensus belief around him. We saw that at Ohio State. We saw that in college. And if you go back, if you're in the scouting community, there were people that swore Justin Fields was not a runner because he didn't run at Ohio State, and that he was a polished passer ready to come in. And so that's one thing about the narrative on him. But I like him a lot above those other 2 players. I think that there are some concerns long-term about Lamar Jackson if he is transitioning to that less running, more passing, because it does kind of seem like the Ravens are getting ready for that with the addition of Zay Flowers, bringing in Todd Monken to run a little bit of a different scheme. It does kind of seem like those days of Lamar being 1,000-yard rusher is going to be over, because now that they're paid him, they want him available and on the field. And Lawrence is right there too. The addition of Calvin Ridley, I think, really solidifies the talent that's there, the Jacksonville receiving core. But again, that's a guy that I think he's kind of the Joe or the Justin Herbert mold or the Joe Burrow mode relative to where the other 2 players can get to.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Number one, I think, the Fields and Lawrence debate, I am perfectly comfortable with all 3 of these guys. If I had to build around these guys as my number 1 quarterback, this is the spot I think where I'm like, okay, I still feel like I have a good floor with these guys. This stems from, I have Fields ranked ahead of Lawrence and Jackson as well. And it's just belief that he will take that next step. We saw what the ceiling is from a rushing perspective. And I think in an ideal world, Justin Fields runs a lot less next year. because they really kind of threw the team on his shoulders and said, hey, kid, we need you to go win us some games. And ultimately, he didn't do that a whole lot. They earned the first overall pick, but that's why they said, hey, we're going to get you some help. There have been some things some chatter that have said, we've got our quarterback. That's why we're building around him now. And, they aren't looking toward the future, but there is still a world in which Justin Fields doesn't take that next step. And this is aggressively high. Baking in risk, though, I think 6 is right, because I think his ceiling is actually right next to Jalen Hurts in that tier 1. Trevor Lawrence, you're right, Kevin. I think we saw the floor. I think the ceiling is definitely increased even with Calvin Ridley's addition. And then you mentioned the 1,000-yard rusher thing, Jeff. I've done some Baltimore projections already, and I've got him down closer to 750 rushing yards. So I think that discrepancy from where he was when he was winning MVPs to what he's going to be now, he makes up for it with passing efficiency. He's a very, very efficient passer, and that's why I'm still comfortable with him as a number 1. But I think that's why he bumps down below Fields and Lawrence for me too.
So I'm working on a Lamar spotlight right now for Football Guys. Lamar has a chance to maybe be a top 3 guy though. Like there is with Monken's, with his offense and like with those weapons, it really. But the problem is it hinges on OBJ. Like I really feel like, and that's a hard thing to kind of hitch my my quarterback 1 take to. He's got to be healthy. Zay, Rashad, those guys got to be there too. But really, gosh, the guy that's coming back to me for the Ravens is Isaiah Likely, and Jeff's gonna look at me weird. But in that system, he could be very good. And if those guys elevate their play with Andrews there, Lamar could really he could take off there. And I'm very comfortable with all 3 of these guys. And we've kind of talked about this. This is exactly how my rankings go. But again, when you're looking at Fields and Lawrence and Lamar, really the thing is Fields just has to develop more as a passer. And if he does that, then we're okay. We're comfortable. That's there. He's got his weapons there. Lawrence and Lamar, I think, have bigger question marks at that wide receiver 1 position. Like, what is Ridley? We haven't seen him play in a year and a half, and that's a question mark. And in Lamar, that receiver room always looks good on paper, but it never pans out. And I think with the offensive system now is going to be a little bit better. But overall, I think that's why Fields bumps up to me, because I think DJ Moore is a better football player than people give him credit for. So I think that's where I have Fields just leaning a little bit ahead.
Well, that's because Lamar's wide receiver 1 is lining up at tight end. And so, I mean, that production and upside certainly there with Mark Andrews, but I'm curious how Baltimore will run Bateman and Zay Flowers, because they used Bateman last year really just as a vertical threat. But I think that we all kind of feel like there's more to his game that wasn't tapped into. And so what are they going to do? Are they going to use him, keep him vertically, or kind of what we saw with Hollywood Brown when he came in? They used him vertically. Then once they brought Bateman in, they brought Hollywood Brown closer to the line of scrimmage and allowed him to create in that regard. And so I wonder if Zay Flowers will get eased in more as the vertical threat in that offense, and they'll allow Rashard Bateman to move more into a player who gets a lot more volume consistently.
Yeah, and I do be fair with Todd Monken and what he tries to do. He does utilize the quarterback rushing ability, and he said he's going to do that. He said it's not going to be you're not going to see like jet sweeps with Lamar anymore, but you're going to see his ability to kind of open that spacing and do this type of thing. So I think we still are going to see a rushing upside, and I think 700 is a perfectly good projection, but we could see him have those big weeks, and that where his projection kind of go up. And I think that's the key to look at there. All right, let's get into tier 4. So this is a big ass tier. Sorry, Joe. So there's a big one, but let's get through them all. Caleb Williams at 9, Kyler Murray at 10, Deshaun Watson at 11, Anthony Richardson at 12, 13 is Dak Prescott, 14 is Bryce Young, and then 15 is CJ Stroud. Let's talk about Caleb Williams. So we put Caleb Williams, USC quarterback, for those of you that don't know, first Devy quarterback in here, presumptive 101 next year. Things happen that are weird, but presumptive right now, Heisman winner. He's going there. So why do we have him there? We're going to go to Christian first, because this is Caleb's Christian's guy. He's been talking about him for a while now. So are we comfortable having him ahead of all those guys already in the NFL, already got top 5 capital? Bryson went 101. We're cool with that.
Yep. Yes, we are. I have Caleb Williams as my quarterback 6 in my combined rankings right now. Which I know is aggressive, and probably shouldn't have said that. But the reason I believe in his ability is because we've spent a lot of time talking about rushing floors. Caleb is the perfect blend of a high rushing floor and the elite arm talent. And those types of things get drafted highly. I feel very confident that, maybe Caleb does slip. He's the 102 next year. Maybe Drake May takes a step up and we have him too low when we get to that. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe that happens. You're still looking at a great fantasy football asset. He's going to be able to push the ball to every level of the field. He's already got an NFL arm. And then from a rushing perspective, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he is a very good ball carrier in that he's got really good open field vision. He runs probably more like Hurts than he does Lamar or Fields, but I also think that that's a valuable asset to have. And people are calling him Baby Mahomes, and I agree with it. And so I'll rank him at 6 and be probably the one that pushed him here into the top 10, honestly.
Where are you at with him, Jeff? I know you don't like Devy quarterbacks.
Well, no, I really like Caleb Williams a lot. I mean, I think that that's a different level. My question, I really wonder if he's going to bring rushing into the NFL is my question, because I think he has functional athleticism for the position, and I think he does a good job buying time, creating space, allowing his receivers to create downfield. I don't see, he's certainly not athletically in the Lamar Jackson and the Justin Fields tier. And I really kind of question, some of the other quarterbacks that are in this tier with him, with Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson, if he's quite athletically on their level in the rushing game, because Watson was a player, he ran for 1,100 yards in 1 year at Clemson. So, and we've seen that rushing come to the NFL, but he uses a lot more sporadically, and he doesn't use it as much anymore in his career. And so that's one question that, because we've seen traditionally in the past, we've seen Baker Mayfield is a player that comes to mind that ran quite a bit in college, and it didn't translate. He just wasn't able to run at the NFL level. And I think Caleb Williams is a better athlete than that, but I'm not baking in, I don't believe, on Caleb Williams a high rushing floor when it comes to the NFL level, just he is such a good developed passer. And again, I don't think the athleticism is quite there relative to some of the other players. But again, that passing is excellent, and I think draft capital, he's going to be the first pick next year. It would be shocking if he wasn't. And I think that he's just more developed than other quarterbacks that we've seen come along, more creativity, more upside potentially there. You run through the other tier. I mean, Richardson certainly has that athleticism translate immediately. The big question on him will be whether or not that play as quarterback translates, and that's really the only thing holding him back. That's the player out of this tier that we could be sitting here a year from now, and he's top 5, and he's going top 5 in Superflex drafts. You just know that you're buying in that risk with him. Dak Prescott, sitting right in front of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I think the only thing that is preventing that from flipping very quickly is proving it on the NFL field for Bryce Young and for CJ Stroud. As soon as that happens, as soon as you get a game where you feel comfortable that Young and Stroud have it, I think that they jump above Prescott immediately when it comes to Superflex rankings. And so that's really, Prescott, we just don't see that rushing floor, that rushing upside anymore. And Watson probably has the ability to transcend up into another level again. It's just we need to see a lot better play than what we saw at the end of last year.
Where are you going with Murray, Christian? Like, where do you have him?
I have him ranked at 10. Excuse me. I don't love it though. I'm a little skeptical that we're gonna see high value fantasy performances from Kyler. There are legitimate reasons to be concerned about how his rushing floor will look following an ACL injury. And the nature, I don't claim to be a doctor or anything like that, but the way he went down to me is, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to try to cut back. He's already a guy that protects himself. If we see something like Dak Prescott with Kyler Murray, where Dak he had a 300 to 400 yardage floor, and now we're sitting under 200. If something like that happens to Kyler Murray, it won't be as drastic, but I think you're looking at that is really holding up his fantasy value, because I don't think Kyler Murray is a very good quarterback. I think he's a mid-tier quarterback that is looking at a roster that, there's not a whole lot helping him. He certainly has DeAndre Hopkins still. and you like some of the pieces potentially around him, but I don't know what that looks like in 2 years. And so I'm probably going to bump him down when I revisit my rankings.
And just to like, because I keep hearing it in Dynasty, like Murray's a buy, Murray's a buy, Murray's a buy, and just give you some perspective here. And Jeff, you tell me what side you like, Kyler Murray or J.K. Dobbins in the 104.
Probably the Dobbins 104 side. I think, I've got Kyler Murray at quarterback 12, right above. I've got Bryce Young at 14 and CJ Stroud at 15. So I mean, they're right there. So and I don't know. Apparently I'm the lowest one out of everybody on Kyler Murray, but I do think it's a little bit funny that for all the talk you hear about Kyler Murray, I do think that in leagues people still certainly treat him like a dynasty,
Yes.
an elite asset, and talk's cheap. And people talk a lot on social media, and you play in leagues with them, and they don't follow what they say. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I think too, like the way I look at tiers, and this is my personal opinion, like if I already have, like if it's the 104 and I already have Bryce that's just sitting there, if he's in the same tier as Murray and I can get an asset like JK, you do it. Because if he's in the same tier and you get an asset added to it, then that's how I look. I do that with running backs. I do that with wide receivers. If I get an offer, they're in the same tier and I get another asset, or maybe it's a little tier down, but I still get an asset that can bump that tier up, I'll do that. Like that's how I kind of look at trading. So like that's how I look at there. Yeah, Jeff kind of ran through all the tiers there. Anything left with tier 4 here? A lot of exciting stuff with tier 4 because there's some guys in here like Anthony Richardson we could talk about being top 6 next year or lower, right? Like there's some risk involved here.
If one of these guys are your quarterback 1 in a Superflex league, how are you feeling?
Well, as someone who has to pick all the time at the end of the first this year, I feel like I have a lot of these guys. And in a 14-team league, I grab Bryce and CJ in a Superflex 14-team league. And I'm a little nervous because it's, they need to hit. But I felt like at that position, like, if these guys do, get in that top 10 area, you're pretty comfortable as long as you hit in your other picks there. I think, honestly, for the best ceiling play, if I had Anthony Richardson, I'd be okay. Because if he doesn't pan out, you're probably going to get a top 3 pick at some point, and you built your team around this guy anyway. So you probably built it young, and so you might be able to put Caleb in there or any of these other guys that you're like, oh, okay. Or in 2 years, whoever that is, Drew Aller, whoever that's the case may be. But there's definitely some limited ceiling though in your fantasy league if you have one of these guys as your quarterback 1.
Yeah, I'm super uncomfortable with this tier. That's why like that cutoff at 8 for Lamar. If I were in a dynasty startup right now in a Superflex, I would try my best to get into the first 10 picks because I think you're going to see a couple non-quarterbacks go. So I think you can still get Lamar around 110 if I had to guess. Kevin, you're the ADP guy of the show. Do you know if that's normally the case?
Well, Jeff told me that's not fun, but yeah, no, usually what it is, it's all 8 those guys. So those tiers that you just saw, and then Jefferson's thrown in there with Chase. Then at 111, it usually comes down to Bijan or CeeDee Lamb, and it really kind of fluctuates. And then usually on the back end, so at the 201, 202, you're looking at people either going with Kyler and just saying, hey, we're going to punt the year, Deshaun or Anthony Richardson. That's usually how it goes. Dak's going to the 205, 206 range, and then Bryce and CJ. It really depends based on the league settings.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's go to tier 5. So this is the I guess we could name it the unknown tier. But we got Tua Tagovailoa at 16. We have Drake May, UNC quarterback, at 17, and then we have Trey Lance all the way down at 18. Kind of hurts my soul to see Trey Lance this low. A lot of question marks here. Tua, I think the question mark, definitely for me and Jeff, I know we're haters in terms of like Christian. I have the biggest question mark is if he's going to play football past this year. Like, and he talked about retirement already and that. Like, I wrote a spotlight for Tua last year. I was headed on the right direction until he got the concussions and he just didn't play. I thought he was set up. That offense is perfect for him and he looked great. Then he just had the concussions, and that's just something I'm scared of. I have Trey everywhere, and it feels like he's going to hit at some point. Like, it just looking at this and just breaking down the 49ers quarterback room I'm doing for a video, man, everything's set up for Trey just to explode in that offense. It's just, the coaching staff's got to believe in him. And then Drake, Drake's one of those guys, Debbie quarterback. You think he's going to be 102 based on everything that we've seen. But, there's questions there. What do you think about this tier, Jeff?
I share concerns on Tua continuing to play football. I think that without that, he would probably be a smash second round pick in many leagues because his age and the production being in Miami, being in that system with Jalen Waddle, with Tyreek Hill, I think everybody would be in on that. But when a guy comes out and says that he thought about hanging it up, that raises major questions on that. And maybe this is a guy that he gets into that second contract and that money really escalates as a franchise quarterback, then that decision might get more real if these concussions continue. But I mean, that said, we've seen players in the past. I mean, if you follow the NBA, Steph Curry, the first couple of years in the league, looked like his ankles just would prevent him entirely from playing. And then, he was able to figure out some maintenance, able to figure out that, and he turned into one of the greatest players of all time in NBA history. So we've seen that before in other sports and football, even where a guy is injured early. Matthew Stafford comes to mind as a player that was injured his first couple of seasons, got some things figured out, and he turned into a bit of an Iron Man up until the end here. And so I don't know. But again, you hear those comments, and once that money really starts to come in, and concussions are scary things. We've seen players walk away very, very young. We saw, is it Chris Borland, the 49ers linebacker, that walked away after his first season? He was great, had a great rookie season, walked away a handful of years ago, right after that year. So that's consideration on Tua. Drake May, I think we talked about him a little bit last week, concerns on Phil Longo leaving that offense. What's he going to look like without Josh Downs in that offense? Is this going to be the guy that gets nitpicked to heck and kind of scales back a little bit on his valuation, on his overall? Is this guy that is not going to be that necessarily the 102 in the NFL draft? Is he land in that late teens-ish range? And I think the upside is certainly still there, but we've just seen it before on quarterbacks, even up until we saw the day of the draft, Will Levis. We thought that people thought he was going to be a top 10 pick, and then he goes on round 2. So it's just always so iffy on quarterbacks and Devy and playing it out until they actually get caught up in the drafts. And then the most interesting one out of this entire tier is Trey Lance. And Trey Lance, said before the show, it feels like every single year, if you play in Superflex or you're doing startups, there's that quarterback in round 3 or 4 where everybody is just ultra nervous about him. And then a year later, you're thinking, wow, that's crazy. He's the 106 now, and he's locked in there. And Trey Lance is sitting in that range here. Like last year, we had Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields were both kind of in that area. The year before, Jalen Hurts, people were a little bit iffy to buy in all the way on Hurts. The year before that, Josh Allen was kind of that guy in that range. And so you look at Trey Lance, he's got every physical tool that you could possibly want in a fantasy quarterback. If he hits in the 49ers, he's got the support, the infrastructure, great offense around him. Everything is there to deliver on being a top-tier fantasy quarterback asset, and the risk has really baked it into there. And yeah, it would hurt to miss on a 4th round pick or the valuation of whatever you paid to get Lance. But at the same time, those are the types of things that you look back in 2 years at a startup and you say, well, how does Jeff have Josh Allen and Trey Lance, and we let Trey Lance go until round 4 or 5. And that's just how that happens. And that's the way that you really break some leagues sometimes.
Where would we have Trey Lance if he didn't get injured? Like, where would you have projected him if, once again, we were doing this time last year and hypothetically he stays healthy?
He'd be in that tier 3 with Fields, Lawrence, and Lamar Jackson, I think.
Yeah. And that would be my case to say, well, maybe even, this is definitely the unknown tier. And I get it. I get putting him here, but also I think balancing it out, I think fitting him into the back of tier 4, I'm just as comfortable having Lance on my roster as I am Anthony Richardson. In fact, I actually still have Lance graded ahead of Anthony Richardson, or ranked ahead of Anthony Richardson based on my pre-draft grades, because we are currently at the same exact spot with those two players. And, they're similar in age. Trey Lance is still a very young asset. I think if he hits, like Jeff said, you're kind of cashing in very, very quickly, just based on where he's going in drafts. I get your guys' concerns about Tua too. And I think, I think concussions are a different beast. And I think when you talk about even Stafford, he had back injuries and those are serious, but head injuries are a lot more serious. So I fully get that. And then Drake May, I talked about it last week, but I just get a little nervous with North Carolina quarterbacks that do have some things to work out. He's not a perfect prospect.
No.
So I think this range is pretty good for him. I also think this is about the range that we'll see him going next year in startups, because I still think that, unless some situations change drastically, I think this is kind of where you'd be comfortable taking him as a rookie.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's jump over to tier 6, and then we got one more tier after that. We got Drew Aller, Penn State quarterback. This is a projection, so that's a very big projection there. Just so you know out there, like, we think that he's going to take over the quarterback, one of the 2025 class. That's what you're looking at there, of someone that you're talking about, like with May at. So that's kind of generally speaking. Daniel Jones at 20. Quinn Ewers at 21. We all feel pretty uncomfortable with that one. Russell Wilson at 22. Jared Goff at 23 and Derek Carr at 24. I think Lions fans will be mad at us, and I think Jared Goff truthers out there are going to be mad about that ranking. Go ahead and take us just wherever you want, Christian, in terms of Aller or maybe Goff, maybe touch on Goff. Like, I don't know where he's necessarily at in your rankings. I know I have him in this tier. I maybe have him a little higher, but he doesn't have that contract extension yet. So he's playing for that contract extension. So I think that's probably what's the biggest takeaway from that.
Yeah, I think with Goff too is, yes, we know what his upside is in that Ben Johnson led offense, but we also know what Jared Goff's downside is. And Ben Johnson's going to get a job after next year if he wants one. And so you're looking at, well, is Jared Goff going to turn back into a pumpkin? And why did I have him valued, somewhere near Trey Lance is kind of where I'm looking at it here. I don't have him there, and I kind of bump him down in this consensus list because they keep saying they believe in Jared Goff, and I guess I should believe them, but also I don't think that they're fully in, or he would have been extended. I also think he's a win with type of quarterback where, like, if you put all the pieces around him, you can get somewhere. And I also think that every single NFL team is consistently looking for a guy that you're winning because of. I don't think Jared Goff is that. I think some of these guys in this tier could become that. Regarding Aller, I think it's a massive projection, but when you look at tools and when you look at how that situation's set up, Penn State's going to be a good football team this year. And if they are, it's because Drew Aller took that next step. He's got all the arm talent in the world. He's got the athleticism. It's a very exciting young prospect that I'm a little shocked, I keep talking about in the past, but a year ago, Quinn Ewers would have been comfortably ahead of Drew Aller, probably, based on we hadn't seen anything. We have seen a little bit of Aller, though, so I feel a little more comfortable with that. Jeff, what do you think of those two players or whoever in this tier?
Again, this is where my nerves come in on Devy, that I need to see it. I think that to feel really comfortable about, and that's why I would have Aller behind, I think, both Daniel Jones and Jared Goff, because I think both Jones and Goff are young enough that you could be running almost 10 years of them being starting NFL quarterbacks. And Aller's, again, projection, and Quinn Ewers, he had moments last year, and we know how he came in as a recruit, but we talked about last week on last week's show where his size wasn't there because he reclassified and came in a year early. And so he still got physical development to do. And so that makes me a little bit nervous that to really feel like he's going to fill out and step into have an NFL quarterback's body. I hear your concerns on Goff signing a long-term contract. I just tend to believe that when you look at the landscape of quarterbacks around the league, you're looking at players like Aaron Rodgers aging out. You're looking at Tom Brady's done. You're looking at Russell Wilson. That's an open question on what he's going to look like the rest of his career. You're looking at Kirk Cousins. It certainly seems like Minnesota wants to replace Kirk Cousins as a starting quarterback, and he's going to be in his mid-30s. Matt Ryan has disappeared now. And so I think that Goff, I feel very, very comfortable that Goff will find a starting quarterback job across the NFL. And I think that it's, when you look long-term with what the Lions have been able to build, I think that if they didn't feel ultra comfortable with him, this was their shot. This was their opportunity to go up there to either take Will Levis when they moved back or had multiple picks in the first round, or to go up there and get Anthony Richardson, because we knew that Arizona wanted to move out of that number 3 pick. And the Lions were certainly flush with capital to be able to get it done. They feel like they're a playoff team. They're not going to have that bonus from the Matthew Stafford trade anymore of having that extra ammunition. They basically had a 2-year window here where they could have added a meaningful piece, and they added Hendon Hooker, and certainly people are excited about that for some reason, but that was a late 3rd-round pick, and he's barely younger than Jared Goff when you really look at the grand scheme of it. I think that was a move where they're looking at it and then saying, we've got a backup quarterback locked in on a 4-year rookie contract now. He's cost controlled. We can go ahead and pay Goff relative to the rest of our contract, the rest of our roster, and move forward with him. And I'm higher on Goff than anybody in the group. I've got him at quarterback 20, I believe. And so I'm in on him there. And I just think long-term he's going to be a quarterback in the league. Russell Wilson and Derek Carr. I mean, we've already seen one organization give up on Derek Carr. And usually once one organization gives up on a player, that starts to stack pretty quickly. And so Derek Carr is kind of in a mid-break situation right now if he will be viewed as a starting quarterback moving forward. And then Russell Wilson, too, that at that age, I think Sean Payton is a guy that I think Peyton wants to win, and he doesn't care about what was given up to get Russell Wilson. He's going to certainly try to win with Russell Wilson, but if Wilson's not capable of doing it, I wonder how long that leash is really going to end up being.
Yeah. And this, to be fair, like on all like the startups I've done, this is essentially like, besides the Debbie guys, you're going to find like, are you comfortable with these guys as your quarterback too? If you wait on quarterback and you're going to draft one of these guys, where's your best bet? And to be honest, probably Jones or Goff. You know, I'd be a little bit more comfortable with those two than I would with like, you know, Wilson and Carr. Like I just would be in terms of that. But yeah, that's where that tier 6 is really like. And yeah, as far as the Debbie guys go, as someone who's kind of like really dived into that and stuff, Aller would be the guy I would definitely be okay taking a shot at. There's 3 Debbie quarterbacks I would draft right now: Caleb, Drake, and Aller. That's it. That's the only 3 guys that I feel comfortable drafting in the Debbie format. Yours, to me, I like his value this year. I didn't like his value last year, but even then, I'm very uncomfortable. So like, just know that about the Debbie format, especially the quarterback format. There's 3 guys that I'd be comfortable drafting. There's other guys that will get talked up, but there's just 3 I'd be comfortable drafting.
Why don't we take a minute and educate our listeners, our viewers, on Drew Aller's game? Because is that a player that brings dual threat ability, or is that a traditional pocket passer? Like what? Tell me about Drew Aller.
Correct.
I'm prototypical 6'5", 240 kid. He got in the weight room and just he looks massive compared to what he did coming in as a freshman. He's got all the tools. So when you think of him, I know 247 Sports comped him to Josh Allen coming out. I know that. But when you watch there, he's not a dual threat. He's not going to be a scrambling guy, but he has functional athleticism. He can get out of the pocket. He can make things happen. You've seen that in college a little bit where he's able to go. But this kid can make every throw from every angle. Like, you know, his ability to kind of manipulate arm angles, and he's got arm strength. Like, this kid can do it all. The only thing that Drew Aller has that's a negative for him is he plays for James Franklin at Penn State, who has not done well with quarterbacks. But if he has a good system around him, he's got 2 of the best running backs in college football in Katrin Allen and Nicholas Singleton. But he can be that guy that steps up and is that prototypical just dude that can sling it. The NFL is going to love Drew Aller. It's just, can he step up and be that guy? And I think the biggest question mark, he can't make questionable throws. I think there's times on his tape that his arm strength is what he believes in, and he's just going to go, and he can throw it into double and triple coverage. But he's got all the tools. Like, you're looking for tools, Aller's got all the tools. Like, realistically, this might be blasphemous after what Drake May did last year. Aller could set himself up to where he's valued higher than Drake May after this year if he hits all of his stuff.
I agree with that. Also, he's from Medina, Jeff. Shout out Ohio. Good football school.
I would have known that. Never mind.
Good football school up there in Medina. No, I second that. And I think, when you're looking at it, he's not going to give you a rushing floor, but I think defining what a floor is, because to me, Patrick Mahomes has a rushing floor. Anything really like over 300 to 400 yards is what I consider that, like, oh, that's good enough. I'll take that. That's enough extra points that'll get you into that potentially top tier, depending on how good your passing efficiency is. I think Aller's definitely a guy that could become that at some point, because you do see him making plays outside of structure, and you see how he moves so well when he does get out of the pocket. I agree with Kevin. I think that there is a world in which we flip the order of May and Aller here after this season, because I also expect some of those Penn State receivers to step up a little bit. I know people have question marks about it, but I think this kid's going to have a massive year. And is it crazy to say he'll be the best quarterback in the Big Ten this year, Kevin?
No,
not at all,
it's not.
right?
I think it would not shock me if Penn State beat Ohio State or Michigan this year. Like, it wouldn't shock me just because I think that they are a very solid team all throughout, and Aller might be the best quarterback. He might step up and just be the best. He's the most NFL ready quarterback, in my opinion, of anybody in the Big Ten. Sorry, McNamara. Like, my bad. All right, let's go to tier 7. Let's look at these guys. Last tier here. Kirk Cousins, Kenny Pickett. Oh my God, Kenny Pickett snuck in here. All right, Kate Klubnik, Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, and Jordan Love. I know Jeff was upset about Geno. Sell me on Geno, Jeff. Sell me.
I mean, really, right now, the sale on Geno would be the support system, the weapons, the football that we saw early in the season. He really fell off towards the second half of last season, and I can't get behind the valuations that I'm seeing on Geno Smith when it gets to fantasy right now, because he's going. I saw him in a dynasty startup that I'm in, and he went in the 5th round this week. And that seems crazy to me that you're going to take a 32-year-old guy in the 5th round. But I mean, having the weapons there, having the addition of Jackson Smith and Jigba, to having DK Metcalf, to having Tyler Lockett, to Noah Fant, if Noah Fant turns into anything, if we have any sliver of hope of that. And then you look at the running backs as well, with Kenneth Walker adding into Zach Charbonnet, and then Kenny McIntosh, I think, can kind of contribute there too. And so I think that the buying in on Geno is buying in on his early production that we saw last year. It's buying in on the offensive support system, the weapons, and hoping that late season blip where he really turned back into Geno Smith is just kind of maybe fatigue, maybe just the grueling season, and he'll be able to, having a second year as a full starter, be able to reset it and move forward with that. And that's really the kind of the sales pitch on him. But again, like, he's got some aggressive belief around fantasy football right now.
Yeah, I don't have much faith in Geno. Personally, I do get it from a weapons perspective, but I also think that Geno that we saw down the stretch last year was Geno Smith. I think once teams got enough film on him and were able to kind of figure out exactly what his tendencies were, he's toast. He averaged an interception per game over his last 8 games. It wasn't good. And when you're looking, he got the contract, but also when you're looking at the structure of that contract, he did not get the contract. He's there as he's got a bridge quarterback deal right now, and maybe a little bit more than a bridge quarterback. I don't really know how we define that anymore, but I think Seattle would be actively looking to upgrade the position. I think some of these young guys that, we have question marks about could become available. We didn't say Brock Purdy's name. I wonder what his availability is if Trey Lance does hit. I think the 49ers would be smart to capitalize on it. I don't know if they'd send him in division, but I think that's Seattle's path forward. I don't necessarily think that they're all the way 100% bought in on Geno themselves. And so for fantasy, I am not either.
I want to get a little bit spicy for you guys, because I know a player that you guys have traditionally believed in. Do you think there's any chance that Geno Smith gets benched for Drew Lock this year?
Yeah, I'm in on it. Let's do it.
No. I'm not going that way. No, I don't think so. I don't think he'll get benched, but I don't think I think Geno is. I call these players Ponzi schemes. Like, they're talked big everywhere, but then, like, there's no substance. I think people stopped watching football after week 8 of fantasy because they were 0-8 because they went to other sites besides Football Guys. Like, I feel like they didn't watch Geno, and I think people that saw Geno, that we saw Geno, I have very big question marks about that. Yeah, he's got all of the tools in the shed. Like, he's got every freaking weapon he needs. That offensive line is really good. They built a heck of an offensive line in Seattle. I don't know if Geno's that guy. I don't know if he is, and I think that that's the big question mark for that roster. I do want to shout out, I think Jordan Love's a lot better than people give him credit for. Now, whether that means he's just a tier above, I think he fits that system very well. I did a video on Jordan Love last year. he fits that system well. They've actually built a really good offense around him to where they're going to let him kind of, I think Aaron Jones is going to have a big year. I think they have this system where I think could elevate Love to where he's a serviceable quarterback too. I'm not crocking crazy here, but I think he can earn that contract and earn that. I think they believe in him too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in on that as well. I was a believer in Jordan Love, and that's, there's a lot of this. He's not the shiny new toy, right? Same thing with Trey Lance. He's not the shiny new toy. We don't have hardcore proof that Trey Lance or Jordan Love cannot play in the league. And in fact, the signs from last year when Jordan Love did have to play suggest that he can play. Some signs from early in Trey Lance's season before he got hurt last year suggest that he maybe he can play. I think from a fantasy perspective, yes, these rankings bake in that risk. But also when I see Jordan Love at 30, I say to myself, well, we have Trey Lance up in tier 5 as an unknown. What separates those two? I think, obviously offensive scheme and how San Francisco sets up their quarterbacks. But I think Kevin's right in that Green Bay did the same thing. They have a lot of youth around him. I think that could be problematic. And I do have some questions about their offensive line. But I also think that there's been some overblown speculation that contract that he got was bad for him, or that it indicates that Green Bay's not in on him. I think it's just we need to figure this out, and this is all of us kind of figuring out the risk here. But I think Jordan Love, if he hits too, I mean, QB 15 range, like that's a good value for where he's going to.
Yeah, important note on Love. He has the functional athleticism, but I don't know that he's going to be a rusher. He was never a rusher in college, and I think that some people think that he might be, but that's out there. Kirk Cousins, I think, is worth talking about because I think Kirk Cousins, there were rumors about the Vikings being aggressive in quarterback around like during the draft, and obviously they didn't do that. But I think that what you're seeing from what I'm seeing around is people are trying to move off Kirk Cousins right now. And I'm telling you right now, that's the wrong time to move it because people have those memories of the Vikings potentially talking about a quarterback in their mind. And that's why, one, people are trying to move him right now, but two, that's going to diminish the cost. And I think that as you get closer to the season, both him and Aaron Rodgers, I think there's going to be a lot of positive momentum build up as you get through the season with the addition of Jordan Addison, the excitement that's coming in there in Minnesota, and then with Aaron Rodgers in the new location with the excitement around there. This is going to probably be your last best chance to capitalize and to move off of those players onto other either deemed risky assets or to reset with draft picks because we don't know what the future is going to hold with Aaron Rodgers. And if he is in a position where he's talking about retiring towards the end of the season, you might get into a situation with Tom Brady where the last handful of years of Tom Brady, you were lucky to get a second round pick, even if you got an additional year that you didn't expect to get. And Cousins might be the same type of thing where if Minnesota makes a move, if he ends up lost in a situation and he's not attached to Justin Jefferson anymore as he's entering his late 30s, I mean, where's the value going to be on that? But again, those aren't pieces that you're going to be able to move right now because a lot of people right now have the mindset that, I don't have roster needs, which is the right way to think about it. You don't have roster needs right now and you're trying to accumulate value, but those veterans aren't going to hold value. And once people approach that week one, if they're sitting on thinking that Brock Purdy is going to be their magic answer and the 49ers are gung-ho with Trey Lance, they're going to start to panic a little bit about not having that quarterback 2 position filled out. And so that's going to be the time to capitalize on those guys.
Yeah. You're not going to shout out your guy, K. Klubnik, Heisman sleeper. You've been posting
one of the best Heisman bets that you can make right now is Kate Klubnik, but that's all I got to say.
Out there with Garrett Riley at Clemson. We'll see what he can do out there. But those are our tiers. So those are tiers 1 through 7. Kind of give you guys some context there, where we're comfortable, where we're not comfortable. And if you like this, if you want to understand quarterback value, I'm going to plug myself. I did write a quarterback value article for Football Guys. So you can go check that out. Kind of dived into every tier of my tiers, where I'd be comfortable going and stuff like that. So if you want to check that out, go to the site, click my name. Don't read any of the other articles. They're all wrong. But click this one. It's good. So you can read through it and you can go from there. So is that it, boys? Is that it for our tiers?
Well, that is it for our tiers, but we do want to make sure to note that the College Football Rookie Guide can still help you. If you've not done your rookie drafts yet, or even if you have and you're looking for those late undrafted gems, make sure to check out the College Football Rookie Guide. It is now version 3.0 is going to be part of the elite subscription for football guys. So if you're a subscriber and you've not downloaded that yet, check that out. But again, that is a great reason to sub. And as we are moving into the season, the content is going to continue to flow and ramp and increase. So make sure to like and subscribe to YouTube, but also become a Football Guys subscriber.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, we'll be back next week, 25th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I'm Kevin Coleman.
I'm Jeff Bell.
And I'm Christian Williams, and you just watched the Football Guys College Football Show.